So welcome to week 2 of Manifest. And I'm glad you enjoyed the smoothie last week. I suppose that's what you think you're going to get today, which is why you came. So just raise your hand if over the last 7 days you have increased in all or any of the things that were discussed last week. Have you done, well, I'm not even going to finish that sentence. Yes, you have. Fantastic, fantastic. Now, some of you may have noticed that there's already been a change in your life. I will, from a scientific point of view, tell you that is completely placebo. But if it works for you, don't stop. I don't say that to mock. But it's very important that we recognize that we're not on easy street. And that this is a 4-week course, not just because we want to see you that much, but actually because, according to our tradition, in the teachings of the Talmud, it says that it takes 28 days to change a behavior. There is a law of chazakah. Chazakah is strength. And if you do something 3 times in a pattern, 3 times in a row, you create chazakah, which means you create an obligation to keep doing it or to keep having something. But if you do something for 28 days, then you have not just chazakah, but you have ownership. You have kinyan, and it's yours. Now, anyone that has a home with a mezuzah, you know the mezuzah on the doorpost? So you actually only have to put up a mezuzah in your home if it is a place that you're going to live for more than 28 days, or you will have full ownership of that space for more than 28 days. So if you are in a hotel room for a week or 2, it's not your space. But the Talmud says after 28 days, after a month, it is now yours. And so the reason why we framed this program across 4 weeks is because what we want to achieve will truly be achieved only if we go along on this 28-day journey. From a neuroplasticity point of view, it's after that period of time that there will be new grooves, small, but new grooves formed within the brain, that our neurons will fire in a different way to how they were when you first started. So for those who have been practicing for the first week, sensational. Maybe you've felt something, maybe you haven't felt something, but what you have done is you have created a chazakah. You've created the beginning of a pattern. You have resigned and committed at the same time to creating change in your life. And so for those of you who are in that camp, I'd like you to put your hands together and clap for the other person who has done so as well. Well done. What about for those who haven't? Either because they weren't here last week, because they only heard how great it was afterwards, or perhaps they were here last week, but they just weren't sure if they'd have the stamina, the discipline, and therefore they didn't even try, or for whatever other reason that you didn't manage to get to bring about change. What about you? Have you lost out? So I've got a different Talmudic teaching for you. And this Talmudic teaching is actually more from the mystical side, but it's referenced in the Talmud and explored in the Kabbalah. And that is, don't worry about it. Because it's from this moment on that change will exist. The reason why you didn't do it for the past week is because you weren't supposed to have done it for the past week. But now is when you are presented with the choice as to whether you will or won't going forward. Now, in context of a life, what is 7 days? So fine, you'll carry on for a week after the course is done to get your 28-day certificate. Big whoop. So part 2, which is really just another part 1, it's just another new beginning. Either you're beginning part 2 or you're beginning to commit to doing what you learned tonight. But let's kick off. We've got enough Talmud, enough Kabbalah off our chest. There's so much more to come. I'd like to begin this evening by handing back to my father, who's going to chair the rest of the evening and kick us off with the first session on mindfulness, my father, Labor Wolf.
Thank you, Menachem. Now I know where the name of the song comes from the Talmud. What was it? Smile and be happy. Don't worry and be happy. Exactly. There you go. Thank you very, very much for all the emails that were received. A good number of them saying how it has been such a pleasure to get up in the morning for the first time in a long time. And tonight, Menachem's going to share with you later how to go to sleep, and that'll be interesting. And all those who have indicated that it's already begun to make a difference. I must admit, I was quite overwhelmed by the responses, and it's really a complete testament to you. In tonight's exercise on drawing mindfully with kavanah, as we began last week, I'd like you to be aware as you're drawing that you are choosing your colors. I don't want you to ask yourself why. This is not analytical. It's mindful. I want you to watch and observe yourself choosing the colors. Watch and observe yourself drawing within the confines of those spaces, and just be aware what your mind is doing without asking the why. And as last week, I'd like you to be perfectly silent while you're doing this exercise, not talk with your neighbor, and have concentration and awareness of yourself. I want you to be the little person in your brain observing what's happening in your brain. And for those of you who did not bring back your colored pencils, don't worry, put your hand up, and the remainder that are still in stock will be handed out to you. Okay, so keep your hand up, and Tammy's coming around. Next week, you'll be penalized. You'll be asked to contribute 4 pencils, okay? Fine. So please, people, without any sound, observe what your mind is doing as you draw. Shh. Just be the little observer in your mind, observing what is going on in your mind. Just stop now for a little while. Have a look at the fruits of your labors. It's very interesting because it's revealing. There's no right or wrong, but some people like to complete one area of the page totally multicolors. Others like to take the one color and allow it to spread out wherever they want, and then choose another color to spread out. Others like monocolor. It obviously says something about you, but nothing good or bad. It's just self-revealing. And it's just good to know. And you can interpret the way you choose, and it doesn't matter. Color is also a metaphor for life. You can color in a relationship. You can take any one relationship and be able to see the different dimensions that you need to color it in. And the way that you actually colored in your pieces of paper there probably reflect the way that you color in your relationships without actually noticing it. That's why I wanted you this evening to actually be aware what's happening in your mind, because it might be very useful to see for yourself how you colour in other aspects of life, which are more abstract, that don't have a pencil and don't have shape and paper as such. And therefore it could be more than just a metaphor. It could actually be a very, very good exercise. Now, some of you may have noticed that it's also very relaxing. And imagine it's relaxing while you're focused and concentrating. In other words, being focused and concentrating is not the opposite of relaxation. And that's an interesting observation for you to make for yourself, and to choose aspects of your doing life that can actually be relaxing and therefore fulfilling. How many of you actually, during the course of the week, chose to spend 10 minutes a day filling in your papers? Okay. Now, if you do this, the cumulative effect of that will be that you are becoming a more relaxed individual while concentrating, while using central executive mode. And you are, at the same time, using a lot of creativity here. And your observation of your mind as it chose the colours is that creative aspect. So I encourage you to keep doing this. Continue to do it daily, and you'll find it's a little island in the day that is able to fulfill your needs.
I have a quick question. I find it quite frustrating doing it.
Then don't do it, please. A lot of people ask me many things, not unlike what you said. It's legitimate. Some people say, for example, with meditation, you know, meditation not only doesn't do anything for me, it can even create tension within me. They should not meditate. Okay? I'm not sure if there's any other person like you in the room. You're obviously a very unique individual, and we'll have to find the signature activity for you that suits who you are. We'll have a chat later on, and we'll find that. Okay. I don't want to interrupt. Usually I won't be taking questions, so we want this to flow and be on time. Dr. Debbie Herbst, whom most of you met last week, there's a few of you who are fresh for this week, will have heard that one of the areas of medical interest is in her, that she has is her relationship with food and the way the food affects our body. And last week there was some discussion of inflammation, and also I know she's going to introduce something further to do with sugar today. So perhaps with that little introduction, I'm going to ask Debbie to come forward and share with us.
Thank you, Label. Thank you, everyone, for filling the room again. And obviously, as Label said, we've been hearing some very good and positive feedback, and it's obviously a testament that everybody's here again tonight. Just one thing I know Menachem mentioned and Label also mentioned tonight about, obviously speaking about mindfulness and the mindfulness practice that we all just did. Just this week, came across some recent research done at Harvard, where not only, as Label said, you'll find that if you do something like the colouring in or other forms of mindfulness, and as Bev will do later, meditation, not only does it just make you feel relaxed, but they've now been able to do to prove that it actually changes the brain itself. There's a thing known as a functional MRI. You know, an MRI is just taking pictures, images, if you like, but functional MRIs, so we'd actually see how the brain is actually activated, has demonstrated that people, after quite short period of time of undertaking mindfulness activities, actually can demonstrate changes in the way their brain functions. So it's not just a feeling, it's not just a feel-good, it actually does something very, very real and tangible. By the way, just because we can't measure things, though, in real, it doesn't mean that they're not effective either. So anyway, so I did teach in many years ago for a very brief time. So the teacher in me will ask, where's everyone's homework? No one handed me their homework today, but we'll talk about it a little bit later. As they say, the proof is in the pudding, not so much in the sheets that you hand in. So today we're going to continue on, I guess, JERF. Does anyone know what that stands for? No? Think about it. Just eat real food. Thank you. So that's where we started off last week, and we spoke sort of in pretty general terms. And today we're going to drill down a little bit more into the hows and whys of what that looks like and feels like. So, show of hands. Who thinks MasterChef is good in terms of helping people learn how to eat? No, no one. Everyone thinks it's, few hands. Most people think it's bad. Few people think it's good. Can someone who's put up their hand to say why they think it's good?
We'll make everything from scratch.
Yes. Anyone else? Yep.
They use real food.
Absolutely. So I know people think, you know, obviously it's made for commercial purposes and to make money for the television station and for the production company. However, we could probably argue this, but the concept that people, real people, well, supposedly they're, you know, real home chefs, not professionals, have to make food out of real ingredients. In fact, they get penalised if they, you know, use a jar of something or a packet of, they've got to make their own mayonnaise. Everything's supposed to be from scratch. And we watch, you know, how they have the pantry, the open pantry, you know, there's this like every fruit and vegetable under the sun, proteins. So I think on some level, if we take away the commercial aspect, that MasterChef in some ways might be good. The other good thing that it does is, I guess, if we sort of take out the highly complex and ridiculous things that they're now forced to make in order to win the competition, is the concept of families cooking together, of families shopping together, of going out, what's seasonal, what can we find, you know, going to your local market, as they sometimes do. And again, a lot of research, and I'm sure there's others here tonight who probably can talk about this better than I can. Lots of research and evidence that families who eat together not only stay together, but there's good evidence in terms of children and teenagers less likely to get into trouble in all sorts of fronts. But anyway, so I think MasterChef on some level is good, been a good thing for Australia to show people you can make really good tasty food and you don't need to ever open up a packet. All right, so if we do a little recap from last week, Menachem spoke about and did the Moda Ani. And Menachem spoke about that each one of us matters. Each one of us is here for a purpose. There's a famous saying, your birthday is the day that God said you matter. You are here for a reason. Each one of us was born and we each matter. We can each make changes, not only for ourselves, but our families and our communities. And, you know, we all talk about the ripple effect. So everyone in this room here tonight shares with their families and their friends, perhaps just one point that they take out of tonight. Now, I thought about this, and we know, again, in Judaism, there's a concept of na'aseh v'nishma. We will do, and then we will learn. Coming up to Shavuot in a few weeks, we know the Jewish people took the Torah and said, here we are, we'll take whatever you give us, God. We'll worry about the details, learning and understanding it later. And so, on some level, thinking about specifically about food and nutrition, do we have to learn and understand absolutely everything behind it all, or do we just say real food? It's real food. It's what God created for us. Do we really need to understand why every phytochemical in every food that we eat, or do we just say the food that, as I said, God provided us in the real state is what we should be doing, should be eating? Because obviously this modern world, and you know, I started off talking about this latest research from Harvard. Do we worry about everything having to be, you know, proven scientifically? And we could spend hours talking about the bias in a lot of scientific studies, the companies who sponsor those so-called scientific controlled studies. So anyway, just something to think about, again, coming back to like to keep it basic, like to keep it simple, the foods that have been put in this world. Again, you know, small changes can make substantial change. So as much as we all want to, you know, get it all right all of the time and be perfect all of the time, it's really about trying to make some small changes. And I guess that's what we'll be trying to do over the next few weeks. And yeah, just do it. Let's just do it. All right, so just a recap from last week. Well, I didn't show this slide last week, but the idea that our collective health is actually a lot worse than it used to be. And this slide is sort of a representation of what has actually happened since those first food guidelines were introduced in sort of the 80s and the 90s. People actually, Sim isn't here yet, but contrary to what Sim said last week, people are actually exercising more now than they were in the, I think in the late 80s, early 90s, in terms of, specifically in terms of intensity of exercise. It might be a small increase, but something between, you know, I can't remember, it was 30%, you know, used to say they exercise, now it's 32%, but certainly in the terms of intensity of exercise that people do, people have actually listened to what conventional medicine and wisdom says, yes, you need to go and move more, you need to exercise more. So people actually have exercised more. People have drank less alcohol, because that's what they've been told to do. People have actually eaten more fruit and vegetables because that's what they've been told to do. They've reduced their salt. They've added more vegetable oil because they've been told vegetable oils are healthy, polyunsaturated. They've eaten a lot less animal fat. So they've done all of that. People have done all of that, but yet what we're left with is what's on the body, on the bottom: obesity, diabetes, all the things we spoke about last week. The one thing, there's a few things we didn't mention last week, kidney disease, for example, but a lot of the increase in kidney disease is actually directly related to diabetes. Allergies often comes under the autoimmune category. But one thing we didn't talk about is decrease in fertility of 30%, which was alarming. When I saw this, I was like, something we didn't talk about. Now, I had a conversation with a colleague about this, and I don't have the data, and we all know anecdotally the rise in the number of people seeking IVF and assisted reproduction. I mean, every day another IVF clinic is opening up, and I'm sure it's directly related to that. Sorry. Yep. So this very much speaks to, as I said, since 1982, that people dropped their intake of fat because that's all the guidelines said. You know, we're all eating too much fat. That's why people are dropping dead of heart attacks, because we eat too much fat. And in particular, animal fat, the intake of animal fat decreased by 85%. So people, as I said, decrease their salt, alcohol, exercise more, but yet all these things are on the increased. So what we're going to focus on today, and as label flagged, is specifically inflammation, because inflammation is very much front and centre and very central to a lot of the chronic disease that we talked about. And in my mind, there are actually three main culprits that we're going to focus on today, although there are others. The first of the three main culprits is too much sugar. One thing in those green arrows, there was nothing about eating less sugar. And part of the reason for that is actually in the food guidelines, they didn't really talk about that too much. It was all fat, 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 fat. No one really focused too much on the sugar. So we eat way too much sugar. Sugar consumption has increased. It's actually quite hard to measure sugar consumption, because if we talk about what, you know, people take home bags of sugar, that's actually decreased. But the amount of sugar in most of the processed foods we eat is just, you know, astronomical. So people actually are consuming more sugar. The next of the main culprits is, sorry for this bit of confronting slide, oil, cooking oil, vegetable oils, seed oils. The consumption of these has also, you know, very markedly increased. And the third of the culprits, which perhaps is, well, no, I'm not going to say it's more contentious, is wheat. And when I found these slides just recently, I was really, really happy. And the reason is that when I sort of undertook some of these changes a number of years ago, a lot of my friends said, how can you say eating bread and wheat is bad? Because in the Torah, bread is very central. We've just finished Pesach. The Jews ate matzah. that's made from wheat. Wheat is essential. We talk here about wheat. Shavuot is the harvest festival coming up. Wheat, we talk about im ein kemach, ein Torah. If there's no flour, there's no Torah. Torah is compared to wheat and bread is the staple of life. And how can you say, if God says, you know, how can you say? And I often tell people, well, but the wheat we eat today isn't the same wheat that was in the Torah. They didn't have all those 80,000 or whatever, 100,000 processed products in the supermarket. Sure, they ate wheat, and sure, bread was the staple of life, but when whatever they baked for the day was finished, that was it. They weren't going then having pasta and all the other wheat that we eat. But so I was very happy to actually find these slides which showed very, very nicely that how our modern wheat, and people think this is about GMO, genetic modification. It's not. I'll just very briefly, because I love this story, that this was in the late in the 60s when, you know, everyone thought the world's going to die because of the population explosion. There's not enough food in the world to feed all the people. In America at the time, and there's all politics behind this, but we won't get into it. The race was on. How can we have wheat that people in Africa and people in countries where there's poor water supply, poor irrigation, and they don't have the best farming practices, so they actually crossbred multiple types of wheat. I mean, this was the latest in the steps, and they've come up with this wheat that is much shorter, fatter, much easier to grow. It is a lot hardier, and that's so we can, when we talk about, you know, we show up the top in the times of in Egypt before we all. That yes, they did have wheat, but it is not the same wheat that we eat today. And in particular, the gluten content of our modern wheat is much higher than of ancient wheats. All right. So I always toss up in mind, should we talk about what we shouldn't eat, or should we talk about, I know people want to hear, but what should I eat? But I think we briefly have to talk about it. So last week we spoke about, we won't call them foods, but processed food-like products. And why is that? As it says there, they usually contain sugar. And sugar has very, very many guises. I think there's about 50 different types. Sugar, I love the latest one, is cane juice extract. You know, molasses, you know, or there's about 50, I didn't put up a slide of all the different guises in sugar, but there are many. Yes. Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, sorry. The other thing that appears in a lot of processed foods are these oils, high in omega-6s, and we know that the overconsumption of sugar and these oils are very, very directly correlated with the development of inflammation in the body, and which, as I said, is central to chronic disease. Gluten is also very highly implicated in the inflammatory process. I'm just going to put up there. Oh, I better hurry. I won't talk about it then. We'll talk about it next week. So people talk about, so what should we eat? And this is just a very small list of all the, you know, common diets around, and people get very confused and very confounded and give up. And they say, well, one day you say this, one day you say that. All right, what is inflammation? I'm going to have to rush here. So the body, the acute short-term inflammation is the body's attempt to heal after there's been an injury. So, you know, you cut yourself, the body produces some nice, you know, exudate, which is it gets a bit red, it gets a bit swollen. That's the body's attempt to heal, and it heals. That's fine. It's when there's chronic injury, and the chronic injury is the ongoing import of foods that are causing insult to the body. And so when you have that chronic injury, the chronic insults, it leads to chronic disease, inflammation that isn't good for you. So we also know there's other things apart from the food, stress, lack of sleep. Yes. I also want to mention just another piece of research about the number of additives in our foods, which clearly our grandparents and great-grandparents, and certainly the people in Egypt, did not eat. I think there's about 5,000 different food additives. So anyway, just very quickly talking about the inflammation, good, the bad, the ugly. Short term is good, but when you have chronic inflammation, it's not good for you. And we're going to have to run through. This is it in a picture, that it contributes to many different things. So we've talked about what not to eat. What not to eat. Anything, ingredients that you can't pronounce. Anything that didn't exist in your grandparents' day, anything containing any of those vegetable oils, anything containing high fat, high fructose corn syrup, which isn't such a problem in Australia, but certainly is in America. I love this one. Anything advertised on TV. When was the last time you saw an ad for broccoli? Anyway, anything called a cheese food because it's not, or any type of other something food. It either is or it isn't. Artificial sweeteners, preservatives, dyes, anything with more than 5 ingredients on the label, and anything if sugar or one of its other pseudonyms is in the first 5 ingredients. Now, quickly, what should you eat? The reason I like this slide is because it's very colourful, and they talk about trying to include food groups that are very different colours. If you think about it, unhealthy processed foods tend to be grey or brown, or real foods tend to be very colourful. Oops, sorry. And this sort of says it all. Down the bottom, healthy fats, meat, poultry, fish, eggs, non-starchy vegetables, dairy that can be a bit contentious, fermented foods, which we'll talk about next week, nuts and seeds. And you see up the top there, it says some things like dark chocolate. This is the key. This is what we should be eating. Like I said, I find it easy. Keep it simple, keep it real. All these things are things found in nature, not found in a packet. And just to emphasise that again, we should be eating those things in the middle, avoiding the things down the bottom that you see. They're all in packets and bottles and wrappers, and they make them look colourful, but that's only because they're lollies. Otherwise, they're not really colourful. And just this, I like these slides. That I forgot to declare my conflict that I was in that sugar film. I did not get paid a cent for it, so I've got no financial interest in this whatsoever. I'm happy to share that information with anyone. But the people who made the sugar, anyway, often we think, and this is another key message, that things like chocolate and cans of Coke, oh, that's where all the sugar things are. But low-fat yogurt and even these sport drinks, well, they're okay because it says healthy on it. Sometimes they've got just as much sugar. And not sometimes, a lot of times they've got just as much sugar. Things like muesli bars, granola, things have got, it's got a palm tree and a flower and a bee and it looks healthy and it sounds healthy. You've got to be. Now, so what I want everyone to remember this. Every teaspoon of sugar is 4 grams. And the reason I'm telling you that is because people get really confused about how much sugar they should eat. And so I will tell you, how much sugar should we eat? World Health Organization and even American something last year have come along and agreed with this. Adult women should eat no more than 6 teaspoons of added sugar, and I'll say what that means. Men 9, children no more than 3. We are currently, on average, eating about 25 teaspoons of sugar a day, and some people, whatever. That's sort of an average. Added sugar, I mean not what is found in fruits and vegetables because they have naturally occurring sugars. I'm talking about added sugars. So when we need to read our food, when we need to read the ingredient panels, it's about how much sugar is added into these foods. Things, the hidden traps, sauces, mayonnaise, anything. And again, it comes back to anything that comes in a bottle or a packet is likely to have lots and lots of added sugar, and your sugar intake can very quickly add up. Quickly, oils. What should we do with oils? Again, if it's made in a factory, don't eat it. If God made it, then it's good for you. Homework, take-home message, to track your sugar intake every day. And again, that's only if you have to read the labels. There is an app called That Sugar app. Switch from factory-made oils to naturally occurring wherever possible. And just last but not least, I'm not Barack Obama's biggest fan. However, I think this is a really useful quote. We're here today to be talking about changes that we can make, not only for ourselves, but for our families and communities, and it's up to us. Thank you. That's all right.
Now, this kind of sets a presentation makes it impossible to have questions because there are another 5, 6 speakers, and I know, but we can't have questions. And here, those who are in the quantum group can ask as many questions as they want. They email it to me, we pass it on to the speaker. In some instances, the speakers have indicated their email and you can contact them directly. So you can ask as many questions. But can you understand that if we have 7 presentations and it's very tight, and unless you want to leave at 1:30 this morning, you'll have to practice delayed gratification. Joel Gershman as I introduced last week, is someone who I have the profoundest respect of as a person who has, in a very, very nice, quiet way, entered into the life of corporate and individuals and translated theory into practice. Last week he introduced the notion of developing your core purpose. Today he's going to talk in terms of application of that core purpose in context of your daily life. Joel.
All right, good evening everyone. And welcome back for those of you who were in my session last week, and welcome to those of you who are here for the first time. If you were here last week, you might recall that in my work as a business coach, I help business owners to grow their business. But what I also do is try to help them improve their lives in a holistic way, not just their business, but every aspect of their life. And we made the point that to live a successful, meaningful, fulfilling life, it's important to live mindfully. And we defined that last week, the way I defined it at least, was we need to become more deliberate, more intentional, more purposeful about how we manage our time and how we live our lives. And to do that, we said that the first step is to define what we called your core purpose. And we said your core purpose reflects what's important to you in life, your values, and especially the values that relate to the impact you want to have on others. We said that when you know what's truly important to you in life, you can align your life with those values, and when you do, you enhance your sense of meaning and fulfillment. And in order to do that, I hope you completed the exercise I set for you, which was to write your own eulogy. A bit of a confronting exercise, but extremely powerful. And the idea is to write the eulogy and then to distill down the values contained within that eulogy into a simple, powerful purpose statement. That was really step one. And I hope that you have had a chance to undertake that first activity. But here's step two. Even if you define your purpose, there's a wide and deep chasm between defining a purpose on one hand and then living that purpose day to day on the other hand. You know, your purpose is really just a theory until you actually apply it in your life practically. And that's why tonight's session is all about how to apply your purpose across each domain of your life. And to help you do that, we're going to explore two critical strategies. And the first of those is goal setting. You see, it's not enough to define a set of lofty values, as important as that is. To bring those values to life, you actually need to translate them into specific, measurable goals. So just understand the difference here, right? Your values reflect how you want to live, but they don't tell you what you should do to live those values practically, right? Goals are very different. Goals are what you need to achieve to successfully live your values. Give an example. Getting your kids to school on time, this one's relevant to me. Getting your children to school on time would be a goal that sits within the value of, let's say, being a good parent. Right? That's a value. But how do you be a good parent? Well, there are lots of ways, right? One goal you might set for yourself is getting kids to school on time. Another example, running 5 kilometres each day would be a goal that sits within the broader value of staying fit and healthy. Does that make sense? Yeah? So the question is, okay, we understand the difference, but why bother setting goals? I mean, seriously, do we really have time? We're all busy. Just clarify your values and then just start living them. Why bother setting goals? Yeah? Nice, you have to set yourself a path, right? Being a good parent, for example, is such a big idea. Where do you even start, right? Set yourself a path. Okay, nice. Any other takers? Goalposts, did you say? Yeah, if you have clear goalposts, you know where to aim. Nice. Any last takers? Yeah, one more.
To live your life in such a way that your actions speak louder than what you're speaking.
To live your life in a way that your actions speak louder, and you're saying goals help you do that. Is that right? Yeah, and I would agree with that idea. I find that if you know what you're aiming for, you're much more likely to get there. If you think about it, some of the greatest achievements in human history happen when they're underpinned by clear, driving goals. I love the classic example of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. We all know it, the speech on the steps of Lincoln Memorial. The reason I personally love that, aside from the value that he was promoting, was because it was a masterclass in goal setting. Right? It made the goal, the vision, or in his words, the dream, really palpable, really easy to understand, really tangible. Right? The value was freedom and equality. But he then translated that into some specific goals. Let's have a quick look at how he did it. Here we go.
I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream.
I'm going to stop it there for a second. We could listen to it, the rest of it. But again, he tries to articulate what does that value of equality look like in practice. It looks like a society where my kids are not going to be judged by the colour of their skin, but by the content of their character, and so on. Just to take another example, briefly, another major achievement in human history, at least in the last 100 years, was the moon landing, right? And it wouldn't have happened had JFK not come along and set an ambitious goal. What was it? We're going to put a man on the moon, and within the next decade, we're going to bring him back. And since we're talking about moon landings, who's seen the movie Hidden Figures? Yeah? Everyone know Katherine Johnson? Yeah? The mathematician and physicist. She was the one who calculated, JFK might have set the goal, but she calculated the trajectories and orbits for the moon landing and did it despite deep, racial and gender discrimination that was going on at the time. They dubbed her the human computer. But what's interesting about her was not just her achievements, but how she managed to calculate the moon landing. When she was asked, this is what she said. She said early on, when they said they wanted the capsule to come down at a certain place, they were trying to compute when it should start. I said, let me do it. You tell me when you want it and where you want it to land, and I'll do it backwards and tell you when to take off. That was my forte, right? In other words, tell me what the end goal is, and then we'll work backwards. Once I know what we need to achieve, I'll work backwards from there. And it sounds so logical, but they weren't doing it that way. You want to achieve a goal, like landing on the moon? Well, you've got to start with the goal, and then you can calculate how to get there. And that's really what goal setting is all about. And by the way, this is not just anecdotal. In case you're interested in some of the research on this, and I don't want to spend too much time talking about the research, but there have been some incredible studies done. One interesting study that was done at Harvard was they measured some university students at the end of their course, and they looked at how many of them actually set goals for their careers. And they found that 84% of students did not set any goals. 13% set some goals but didn't really write them down. They were kind of a bit fluffy. And 3% actually wrote down tangible goals. You know what they found? They found that the 3% of people who wrote down their tangible goals ended up with earning capacity that was something like 300% more than all the others. Right? Why? I mean, goal setting is powerful. It's pretty simple. Now, the question is, how do we do this, right? How do we actually translate our goals into practice? And the key here is to set goals in a balanced way across all aspects of our life. And it's helpful to think of your life as comprising 3 primary dimensions. Number 1 is your relationship with yourself. In other words, your physical, emotional, and spiritual health and well-being. It's number 1. Number 2 is your relationship with others. By that I mean your family, your friends, maybe close acquaintances. And 3, your relationship with the world. That's beyond yourself, beyond your family. That refers to your business, your job, or any communal or non-paid work that you might do. And what we're saying here is that real fulfillment in life comes when you give expression to your purpose in each domain in a holistic, balanced way. And the way to do it is to set specific, measurable goals for each of those domains. So, let's get practical for a minute. How do we do this? What are some examples? So, in fact, I won't go there yet. Go there in a second. So, let's start with the relationship with yourself. So we said that's your physical, emotional, spiritual health and well-being. Take your physical health. Right? And some of the other speakers have touched on these ideas. I hope what I'm talking about now is going to align really well with what the other speakers are talking about. In some ways, become a framework to help capture some of the insights that we've been discussing with the other speakers. So let's say you have a value of being fit and healthy. You could set goals like implementing a healthy eating regime to lose a few kilograms, right? Or you could commit to an exercise program 2 or 3 days a week. That could be a goal, right? For some people, it may even include a really ambitious goal like running a marathon by the end of the year. It's really up to you, right? It doesn't matter what goals you set, as long as they're aligned with the values and pushing you forward. You might remember that I talked about Howard, a client of mine that I worked with. His goal was to get back to what he called his fighting weight of 75 kilograms. He was a black belt in karate. He used to fight in the dojo, used to teach. His goal was to get back to teaching and get back to his fighting weight. That was his goal. Now, your physical health and well-being is important, but I don't think I have to tell you, and we've been talking about it in this whole program, but your emotional and spiritual well-being is equally important. And you know, if you simply set goals based on the direction that some of the other speakers have given you, then you'll probably be doing really well in this area. For example, setting a goal to meditate daily could be an example, or to take a yoga class once a week, or to read a personal growth book once a month, or to go to a lecture once a month or more often. Even just taking a walk to clear your mind could be helpful. The options really are infinite. Howard, just to give you an example, decided to go for a run 3 times a week. And what that enabled him to do was hit 2 goals at the same time. It helped him kind of think and meditate. He was able to meditate while he was running. And at the same time, it helped him get fit and healthy and lose weight, which was his other goal. Your homework is going to be to set some tangible, specific goals for this area. In fact, for all of the areas. But right now we're talking about number 1, which is your relationship with yourself. Let's look at the next area, which is your relationship with others. Okay, we'll go quickly. So this refers to your children, partner, parents, close relatives, close friends. And research clearly indicates that our sense of satisfaction and fulfillment is closely tied to the state of our close relationships. I mean, we all know that. I don't have to tell you that. But the reality is we don't often think intentionally about how to live our values in this area. And so, to give you a quick example, for Howard, being a great husband and father were really important values. But the reality was he was travelling overseas, away from his family, for the majority of the year. He was away for 200 days a year, on average. In fact, he once got into a conversation with the air hostess on the aeroplane, and he realised that he actually does more miles than she does, and that's her job. And that's when he realised that that's just not going well. And he set a new goal, which was to be home 75% of the time. And that had a powerful impact on his life, on his business, on every part of it. And your homework is going to be to set goals in this particular area. Could be spending more time with your family and friends. It could be a goal related to how you relate to your family. Options are infinite, but really important. Let's go one last domain, and that's your relationship with the world. Beyond yourself and beyond your family, and this could relate to your income-generating business, your job, communal work you might do. So many different ways in which you could set goals in this area. Again, it could be volunteering for a not-for-profit organisation once a month. You could be setting goals around your business, around wealth creation, around retirement, around becoming debt-free, and so on. That's the third domain. And if I can just take 2 more minutes, your homework is going to be to set goals in relation to each of these 3 areas. But there's one more thing that we're going to, and that's the workbook that you already have, actually. And it will give you some space to be able to write this stuff down. But there's one last component I want to talk about, and this is critical because this is where rubber hits the road. Goals are great and critical, but we need to translate those goals into action plans, right? Goals are nice and fundamental, as are values. But if we don't translate them to action plans, sometimes it doesn't happen. And what I mean by action plans is a 90-day, step-by-step way of implementing the goal. So in the workbook, I'm going to give you access to something that looks like this. And what it's going to ask you to do is for each goal, you need to create an action plan. And that requires, number 1, coming up with a title for the action plan, one that distinguishes it from others, stating the goal that you're trying to achieve, and then, critically, noting down the milestones or the steps you need to take to bring that goal into reality. And finally, putting some timing against each of those actions, right? When are you going to do step 1? When are you going to do step 2? And my advice to you is feel free to come up with lots of goals if you want to. But I'd like you to come up with no more than 3 to 4 90-day action plans. If you try and do more than 3 or 4 over 90 days, I guarantee you'll fail at all of them, right? So just choose a few goals to focus on for a 90-day period and put them into action. And that's really your homework for the next week. And if you have any questions, feel free to email them through. Really happy to help, and I'm going to make sure you're available to you as a workbook that will help you implement all this stuff. That's it for this session. I look forward to seeing you in the next session, which is going to be about what to do when your wonderful action plans don't go exactly according to plan. All right, thanks.
Thanks very much, Joel. As you can well understand, 20 minutes goes very quickly. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we were able to have Joel, Debbie, others for perhaps an hour, 2 hours, or even a retreat that you could go away from Melbourne and spend time with these people, to be announced. Now, we're going to have a short break, and our wonderful team is handing out drinks. Some of you asked what's in those drinks. So during the break, on screen, the content of that drink that you're going to be drinking will be put there. Please stand up, stretch, have a drink, and we'll resume in about 15 minutes.
So last week, we explored this beautiful mantra of Modeh. And I got a lot of very positive feedback. People who found that the Modeh homework tied in really well with Dr. Bev's meditation homework. And that's excellent because it's all about being efficient with your spirituality. This week, I'd like to teach another mantra, and you'll get it in the homework again. But I last week felt you didn't get the real me. You got my jokes, which is part of the real me. But for anyone that's ever been to a Kabbala class here at Spiritgrow, when I've presented, I have a knack for going well off the deep end until eventually nobody knows where the shore is, how we got there, or how we're going to ever find our car, our appetite, or our desire to ever leave the room. I'd like to do that with you tonight, if you'll permit me. If you're not interested in this, you'll be there by the end anyway. The mantra that I'd like to explore with you is very, very, very simple. It's familiar to everyone. You might think that it's too simple. You may recognize this line from your early childhood. You may recognize it from movies. You may recognize it from shul. The line is, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Simple as that. Too easy. What I'd like to now do is explain, clarify, enlighten, word by word, what this one line truly means, the secret that it contains, so that it is no longer just a prayer or a phrase in Hebrew, but is actually a key to shifting the way you look at yourself and the world we live in. And I know what you're thinking. Menachem, you said that about Modeh Ani last week. Well, if you came for another 50 weeks, I'd say it every week again and give you a different line. Because the truth is, prayer or tefillah is not at all about regurgitating Hebrew words or singing popular songs that you may have learnt in kindergarten. It's about day by day, 3 times a day, reforming, shifting, and changing the way we think and the way we create attitudes towards the world that we live in. The Hebrew word Shema, it means to listen, to hear. But it also, if you've ever spoken Hebrew to an Israeli taxi driver, it means one more thing: understand. Tishma, listen. Just listen. And they're not asking you to just listen. They don't want you on your phone. They don't want you looking out the window. They want you to be so engrossed with what their political opinion is that you will vote for them in the next national election, even if you're a foreigner. Shema is more than just hearing or listening. It is about comprehending and understanding. So what is it that we're meant to comprehend or understand? Yisrael. Yisrael, translated in English as Israel. But every Hebrew word is made up of smaller Hebrew words and letters. The Hebrew word Yisrael is made up of 2 words, Sar El, the minister of the infinite. I know many people might translate El as God. God is a useless translation. It has no source in Hebrew. It's just an English word that people use. I'm not going to use it. Sar El, the minister of the infinite. Now, I want you to think for a moment. Is a minister an individual that holds any power? On the one hand, the minister has a lot of power. The minister in a government controls a ministry, an element of the national budget or the state budget. The minister has power over some sort of government department and possibly even a force. But is that really the power that the minister holds? Or is that the power that has been given to the minister? Is the minister a servant or is the minister a master? Are they a receiver or a giver? And the truth is the minister is both. The minister is both an eved, a servant that must receive the power in a democratic society. The minister receives the power from the people that voted the government in and then uses that power to serve the people that he or she is meant to serve. So the minister is both humble and great at the same time. Yisrael, the individual in the phrase, us, the minister of the infinite, the one who has been empowered with infinite ability, but empowered to utilize that energy. Adonai, commonly translated as God. The Hebrew word Adonai, or God, is made up of 4 letters, Yud, Hey, and Vav, and Hey. The letter Yud is a tiny dot. The letter Hey is an expanded letter with openings. The Vav is a line. And then the next Hey is, as we said earlier, it is an expanded letter. Yud represents the potential of anything, a dot. A dot could be anything. It could be any color. It can be any shape. And it can expand in any direction. It is the potential of the infinite itself. Hey is expansive nature. It's the explosion of potential. Vav, the channeling and the anchoring of that energy. And then Hey, so that it manifests in a whole lot of different arenas. Adonai, or what we might call God is not a real thing. Havaya, or Adonai, is the potential, the expansive, the culmination, the drawing down, the manifestation, the unification of that entire picture is Adonai. I'll come back to it. Understand, minister of the infinite, empowered one, that the infinite, Havaya, the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey, Elokeinu. If a word in Hebrew finishes with the letters Nun, Vav, it means ours. There is ownership. Shelano, it is ours. Elokeinu, our God, our infinite. What does it mean, ours? When something is yours, what must there be? There must be a relationship. There must be a relationship and there must be relatability on some level. It doesn't mean you need to understand, but you do need to be able to lay claim. Shema, understand. Yisrael, empowered one. Adonai, the infinite. Elokeinu, as it relates to you, as you have a relationship with it. Now I want you to stop. Where do we have a relationship with any energy, with any infinite, anything? Who here is alive? Good, good. Lucky, because this could be really awkward if you weren't. It could also be really interesting that you're thinking you're alive. What is the difference between life and death? I know, I'm like getting you to think. That wasn't what you signed up for. I apologize. What is the difference between life and death? A few grams, according to Hollywood movies. One is alive and one is dead. That's the difference. They both have brains, both have hearts, both have all the vital organs, they both have everything, but one is alive and one is dead. Energy. These are all beautiful. Movement is a symptom of life. Good. Wonderful. Great. All correct answers, by the way. So what this non-tangible, immeasurable difference, which I'm going to call life, you could just as easily call a soul. Where does your soul, where does your life go when you die? We live in a finite existence. It can't just go nowhere. It can't be there and then it's gone. There's no such thing as gone. It can change form. Energy can move from one form to another. So where does life go? It returns back to its unanchored state, which means as long as it's within me, it's anchored, which means Shema, listen, comprehend. Yisrael, empowered one. Adonai, that infinite thing. Elokeinu, manifests and flows through you. Now let's just talk about what that is. Adonai, that infinite thing is Echad, one. Let's look at this word, Echad. What is one? In Hebrew, if you want to say one, it is the word Echad. If you want to give the number one a symbol, just call out, what is the letter that represents the symbol one? An aleph. It is one of the most complicated Hebrew letters. In English, in our Roman numeral system, you just do a stroke, one, very simple. Or a dot in some systems. We've got this, did you just see the light? We've got this strange, I planned that. The letter aleph is the most bizarre shape. It's a diagonal. It's got a line that goes up. It's got another line that goes down. It's almost like an X, but it's asymmetrical. How is that one? That should be complicated. give you something more. The letter Aleph is actually made up not of one letter, but the letter Aleph has 3 strokes which correspond to 3 different letters. The long one in the middle is called a Vav, and the 2 short ones are called a Yud. If you take the letter Yud, which is, the numerical value is 10, and you multiply that by 2 because there are 2 Yuds, you've got 20. Vav is 6. What is the numerical value? 26. If I take the Hebrew word for God, Havaya, Adonai, that we said before, Yud is 10, plus Hey, which is 5, equals, plus Vav, which is 6, plus Hey, which is 5, 26. Aleph equals 26, Havaya equals 26. The number 26 represents culmination, wholeness. The letter Aleph has 2 small lines and 1 long diagonal. One line heads upwards into the infinite, representing everything that is. One line points down, which represents earth, the finite reality. And the Vav is the horizontal that connects the 2. Wholeness, oneness, is actually about realizing that everything is connected both in the higher and the lower. Echad, the word one, represents true oneness, where many, many single components can be viewed as a single entity. The letter Chet, which is the middle letter of the word Echad, represents the 1 physical dimension and the 7 spiritual dimensions, but it is smack in the middle of this word Echad because it's all one. That's the Kabbalah for tonight. Let me bring this home. Shema Yisrael, understand, O empowered one, Adonai, the infinite Elokeinu, flows through you so that you come to the realization that Adonai, that everything, the infinite, Echad, is really one. So, now let's look at our life. If you stood up right now, you'd see old people, young people, middle-aged people, you'd see men, you'd see women, you'd see walls, you'd see carpet, you'd see chairs, you'd see the ceiling, you'd see the lights, you'd see the projector, you'd see the microphone, you'd see so many things. But if someone asks you, where were you? You say, oh, I was at Spiritgrow. And where were you? I was in a room. Now, what is that room? The room is a culmination of a whole lot of many parts. And if you think about it, your whole life, your single entity, this thing you call life, is actually the makeup of many parts. Some people choose to see each day as completely separate. Some people choose to see everything as completely separate, to the point that they are separate from anything else, lacking connection, unable to connect. And as a result, they live a life where there is a lot of friction because many different things rub against each other. They cause tension, they cause energy. But actually, while that is the reality of our life, because that is how we see life and how we are designed to see life, and it's actually for our benefit, at the same time we have to pause throughout the day and stop and realize it's all one. It's one organism. Humanity, the planet, the universe. In studies on astronauts, they found that even when they come back to Earth, they have a different perception of reality. And it's not because they're philosophical. It's because by going out of space, or into out of space, whatever, and seeing the Earth for what it is, shifts them and their perspective of what is meaning and what is important in life. The dwarfing of the planet within a greater context dwarfs humanity, and it brings about this incredible humility, making them interesting, making them personable, making them connectors between people. You ever met a humble person? Have you ever met a smart, humble person? You know, smart, humble people, as in you never realized how great they were and they were so easy to connect with, and then you find out they're like the world's leading professor, the world's leading business educator, whatever it is. You're like, wow. I'll give you such a story. I married off a couple recently. And before I marry off a couple, I like to meet with the families. Even if I don't know the parents, I want to know them before the wedding. I don't want to rock up to the chuppah and go, and you are uncle, father. Nice to meet you. So there's a guy sitting on my couch in my lounge room. And I go, oh, what do you do? And he goes, I'm a chancellor. Chancellor? Chancellor of what? chancellor of a particular university. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you know how every university has a chancellor? I said, yes. He goes, I'm the chancellor of that university. And I was like, but what are you doing in my home? I couldn't believe I was sitting with someone who is such a respectable person. He sat there, he was so down to earth and so non-pretentious and so humble. When he said he was a chancellor, I expect a chancellor, some great academic, a great businessman. I'm a chancellor. He was no chancellor. He was a humble person. Then he goes on, he goes, I'm a director on a couple companies. Couple companies, some of Australia's largest companies. This guy is a director of. Sits on the board of directors. And that humility was so profound because it allowed me to have such a real relationship with him in a more profound way. Humility sometimes can connect people in a more profound way than just friendship or happiness can. The homework that I'm giving you is to stop and say the Shema every single day. And you'll get the homework. It says sit either in a room or in a garden, somewhere in nature, or in a park, whatever, away from the street noise. And what I want you to do is sit there and notice all the differences. Walk into the room, see all the different components that make up the room. Walk into a park or a garden, notice all the plants, the soil, the sky, everything. And then bring it together. It is a beautiful scene. It is a beautiful room. It is a beautiful space, and it is beautiful because of the many parts. And once you've done that, once you've united the components, internalize it by saying the words of Shema, which in your homework I've explained as I have tonight. Maybe not as well as tonight, because I don't like writing as long as I speak. So as you say this, you will create this realization that I am empowered. I am the minister. I have been both given the infinite energy, but it is mine to utilize and serve. I am a part of the infinite. The infinite flows through me, but I am a single entity within an infinite singular entity. So now that you've got that, I'd like to finish with one of the most strange teachings in the Talmud. Rabbi Akiva says, "Va'ahavta l'reacha kamocha." Love your fellow as much as yourself. Zeh klal gadol b'Torah. This is the main point of the whole Torah. And what's not a part of the famous quote, he then says, and the rest of it, it's all commentary. So we're talking about Shabbat, kosher, all that stuff is commentary to the concept of loving another as much as yourself. And it's very simple why. If the whole purpose of existence is to create spiritual realities through eating with kosher, through time with Shabbat, or what have you, if that's the purpose of existence, you must have a connection. If you can't find the ability to love another, if you can't find the ability to realize that you and something else are part of a single whole, how do you expect to create a spiritual reality in this world? And so when you say the Shema, and you begin to appreciate that everything is one, you will find it easier to find love for the other components of the very same thing that you're a part of. Thank you.
I really love listening to him. When God created the world, God created movement. Till then, there was absolute stillness, no life, in fact, no physicality. There may have been movement in the spiritual realms, but before that, there was no movement in the spiritual realms. Movement is Hashem speaking through the world, through us, ourselves. And therefore, when we are sedentary, we are opposing the nature of creation. In fact, nothing is absolutely still. You can't achieve absolute stillness. That seat that you're seated on right now Put it under an electron microscope and you see it's a whirling dervish dance of molecules in a constant state of motion. There isn't any such thing as stillness. And therefore we oppose it by being still. That's relatively speaking, because in meditation there is an attempt to achieve relative stillness. But that really is a synergy with a certain quiet movement. But to become moving in a world where we are sedentary is terribly important, because that creates the opportunity for the living forces that Menachem spoke about to flow through our body and create life. But not just the minimal life, but life in its full intensity. And therefore I admire very much our next speaker, Sim Flint, because Sim doesn't just teach movement, but he teaches the importance of living through the movement. And he himself is a living example. And therefore, can I invite you, Sim, to share with us?
Thank you, Label. I find it hard to believe how Menachem's speech and mine tonight are so closely related. First of all, every day I do Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, and I do it many times a day, not just 4 times, many times. The next thing is the last example of Rabbi Akiva, love your neighbor. Rabbi Akiva, love. I admit, I love exercise. I love exercise. I don't expect every person here to love exercise. But I expect every person here to love themselves. To do exercises for the reason that they love themselves. And if someone really wants to see what happens to human beings who don't experience the power of love, I suggest to go and see the powerful Russian movie Loveless. Amazing movie that shows you exactly what happens to human being that unfortunately disconnect from love. Okay, I'm still suffering from that symptom of 2.7 people here that come to hear me. Last time I dedicated the session to the soldiers in Israel, Memorial Day. Today I want to dedicate it to Anzac Day, to all the thousands of brave Australians who unfortunately died either in the war in Gallipoli or were drafted to Vietnam in World War II, in Iraq, and still fighting in Afghanistan today. Now let's get on to it. First of all, people ask me, how often should I do exercise? My answer is very simple. More or less. What does it mean, more or less? I answer, more than never and less than always. And the reason is I don't like to set benchmarks to people. I like people to set their own goals. When you set your own goals, you take responsibility of your own life. And you take responsibility of your own life because you love yourself. And I find that people are more committed to do it when they set their own benchmark. And I'll tell you a quick story about benchmark. In London, people start to complain to the NHS, the National Health Service, that the waiting for admission in hospital is too long. They lie there, for 7, 8, 9, 10 hours before they're admitted. So the NHS decided that they will put a limit of 4 hours. And they set a benchmark. Hospital will have to admit patient within 4 hours. What do you think happened? When the ambulance brought a patient, the hospital realized they can't admit it 4 hours. They said, you know what, just 2 circles. We'll call you when we're ready. So ambulances started to circle in London hospitals. And what happened then? People die from heart attack at home waiting for ambulances. So that's why I don't like to set benchmarks. I would like you to set your own benchmark. Now let's start quickly before the siren goes on. I have to do everything in myself. I have no helpers here. Okay. Okay, that's a summary from our previous sessions, whereby we show the benefits of people who live active lifestyle and have a proper fitness program to people who don't. So we found that have much lower lower rate of mortality from coronary heart disease, high blood, different inflammatory conditions, in summary. There are, unfortunately, people who are not active suffer more from osteoporosis, which is thinning of the bone, and as a result, more fractures, if it's hip fractures or vertebral fractures, and so on and so forth. Depression as well, very closely related to people who don't exercise. Now here we have 10 the most common condition of chronic diseases. So we start with high blood pressure, hypertension. 58% of people, unfortunately, there's an high increase for people who don't exercise. High cholesterol, and we're mainly talking about not just low density cholesterol, we're talking about small particles of low density cholesterol. Sometimes high cholesterol is not a problem. It depends which size of particles they are. And there are thorough tests to find out those sizes of particles. Arteritis, which is the inflammatory condition in joints, ischemic heart attack, diabetes, chronic kidney diseases that many times are related to diabetes, heart failure, depression, different cognitive conditions. Okay, so when we saw before the different type of chronic diseases, we now know for sure that most of them relate to obesity or being overfed. Now, what does it mean, being overfed? That's a point that I found that people really don't understand. Being overfed doesn't mean being a large person. Many people are skinny people, but they're overfed. Overfed means we're measuring what's called body fat percentage. Okay? And the best machine to measure body fat percentage is called a DEXA, which I was the first one to bring it to Australia almost 30 years ago. It's a sort of an X-ray machine with very low radiation. You lie down there for half an hour, you have a schluff there, and it goes above you, and it measures how much muscle, how much fat you have, very precisely, each part of your body. Now, women are recommended to be in the range of 20 to 25% body fat percentage, men between 15 to 20. Now, when women pass 25% body fat percentage, they're already regarded as overfed, and when they pass the 35%, they become obese. So I had many patients in the clinic that you look at them and say, wow, you look fantastic, but they're 40% body fat. 40% of the body is fat and the rest muscle. And they are very much at high risk for all the conditions that I mentioned before. So it's very important to understand that to have low body fat percentage, you have to have higher muscle, what we call lean mass, and lower body fat. There's clear correlation between lifestyle and chronic diseases. Now, many people, unfortunately, have some gene mutations that increase the risk to different diseases. Now, what the latest studies show, that if you take responsibility, because you love yourself, if you take responsibility of your lifestyle factors, and I'm talking about nutrition, exercise regime, meditation, stress management, mindfulness, that's what we regard lifestyle. You can actually determine your risk for chronic diseases more than the gene mutation. So lifestyle factors, today scientifically proven, by far more powerful than your genes. Don't underestimate what you can achieve just by adopting a very healthy lifestyle. Not just that you can prevent progression, you can even reverse condition. We have in the clinic many patients, I'll give you an example, diabetic patients, on high medications. But as you know, medications are not benign. Every medication has some side effects. Then suddenly they feel lethargic and tired and the brain a bit foggy. And they happen to come to the clinic. Just by adopting a proper lifestyle regime, within 3 to 6 months, the specialist is already reducing the medications. That's how effective it can be. Of the 10 common chronic diseases, at least can be prevented. Okay, exactly what I said before. As I mentioned last time, I advocate 2 types of exercises. Aerobic for cardiovascular health and also for cognitive outcomes, and strength. And the purpose of strength is to increase muscle. Now, many people are doing the aerobic part, either jog or walk, but neglect muscle work. Now, aging is defined as a progression of muscle loss. Today, you can find in the scientific literature the strong link, for example, between muscle, the amount of muscle we have, and the strength of our immune system. The more loss of muscle is experienced, the lower our immune system. To reverse it, we have to increase our muscle. How do you increase your muscle? By putting pressure on them. When you put pressure on them and your nutrition contains protein, then the muscle, part of the rehab of the muscle itself, is to absorb protein more efficiently and build new muscle tissue. Extremely important. Not to mention other effects like giving you more balance when you walk, so the risk of falling down is reduced. There are enormous advantages to increase strength of muscle. Enormous. So even if you start a little bit, it's better than nothing. Just one step at a time. So cardio will include running, biking, swimming, anything that more or less bring your heart rate to 120, preferably slightly above, but 120 would be sufficient. So as we say, cardio helps to maintain healthy weight. Now that's a trick here, because cardio by itself will not actually maintain healthy weight. Because if you think about it, if you jog, for example, for half an hour, jogging, half an hour, you burn 250, 300 calories. You take 2 slices of leah challah, and you're already over it. Okay? But 2 slices of leah challah, if you take a bagel, it's only half a bagel. Now, what happens here is that people who exercise are more likely to choose healthy food too. It sets already the brain towards health, towards responsibility. Oh, I already ran, do I have the bagel or not? I'd rather take a piece of fruit. Okay? So there's a strong correlation between the effect of exercise on the mind and on choices we make. And as you know, everyone that sits here, including myself, we are the accumulation today, where we are, every aspect of our life, we are the accumulation of all the choices we made till now. Now, if we like what we are now, let's keep making the same choices. If we don't, all we have to do is change the choices. Strength length. For each decade after 30, muscle mass declines by 3 to 8%. That's for each decade after that. So people like me, they're almost 70, how much muscle do I have? Okay? Unless I exercise regularly. Now, if I can exercise regularly, I'm actually in a path of anti-aging. So my chronic age, very close to 70. But my biological age is between 40 to 50, according to all the tests I'm having. Now, everyone here can do that, not just me. Muscle has high metabolic rate. You see, the only tissue in our body that burns fat is muscle, by the nature of contraction. Fat doesn't burn energy. Fat is the energy itself. Okay? So the more muscle we build, and by the way, having big muscle doesn't mean you're big, you're large. It just means you're more dense. Actually, the more muscle you have, the tighter you are. Okay? Your circumference becomes smaller. Fat has the nature of expansion. Fat expands while muscle contracts. So people, for example, women who come to the clinic and want to reduce the size, for example, when they increase the muscle, reduce body fat, they go much tighter than just losing fat. So muscle has a high metabolic rate. Muscle burns energy. So the more muscle we have, the higher is our basal metabolic rate. Okay, which means we can here and there a little bit of the ice cream, see, only here and there. Only here and there. Okay, we spoke about body fat percentage. Shema Israel. Well, let's get to the exercise. Okay, now. I'm really more excited to be here for people who never exercised. The one who never exercised, the one who belong to the beginning groups, I'm here for you. Because if you start to do something, taking into account your physical condition, taking into account the limitation of time, if you start to do something regularly, as small as it is, hallelujah. You made me happy. Okay, so for beginners, I don't change a thing. You don't change a program for beginners after 1 week. So my recommendation was squats and push-ups. And I advise to do squats for people who can do, and you have videos. You know that you have videos. You can watch me doing a video with a straight back. Tighten the core. Each exercise you do, I suggest you tie the core. The core are the abdominal muscle and the oblique muscle. You tighten it. When you tighten it, you press against your lumbar spine. Okay, so it's better for the lumbar spine. Okay, you squat only backwards, like sitting back on a chair. So your knees don't cross the line of your toes. So you go back. And if you find it hard to do it, then you use a desk. Put your hand on the desk to balance yourself and just start like that. You will be amazed how much strength you get into your quads. Very important for everyone to have strong quads, strong hamstring. When you go down slowly, you break with your hamstring. When you push up, you use your squats. Beginners, don't change a thing. Intermediate could increase the number of reps, not by much. If you did squats 10 times, try to do every second day only 15. So you do 10, next day 15, next day back 10, next day 15. Push-ups, I gave you again. People who just beginners, you can do it against the wall. Just to start to build muscle strength in your arms, in your deltoids, in your shoulders. People who feel more confident can do it on your knees. People who are already in advanced group obviously can do a full body. And even if they can do only 3 full body, then do the 3, then go on your knees and complete the rest on your knees. I don't set benchmark. You decide, okay? Now, the advanced one, I would like you to get into the aerobic way of making strength, of performing strength exercise. Now, what does that mean? It means that you do a number of exercises in a row one after the other, so your heart is working faster and you have the aerobic benefit as well. So I'm adding one exercise, which is lunges. Now, when you lunge forward with one leg and back, slowly. If you want more advanced, then at the same time, you do it with raising your arms. But again, at the same time, you breathe, don't stop breathing, and tighten the core. And if you're more advanced, you can use it with dumbbells, with some weights, the same time. So you're working on your legs and you're working on your shoulders, the same time. Now the advanced one will do 15 squats, followed by 10 to 15 push-ups, no rest, followed by straight away by 10 lunges each leg. And because you do it in a row, your heart rate is going up. Okay? Then you take 1 minute rest. You walk around, don't sit down, just walk around. Breathe deeply. Be mindful to the way your body feels, your breath. And then go and do another set of the same 3 exercises. That's for the advanced one. Did I hear you laughing? תודה רבה.
I got tired listening to the advanced. But I was highly motivated for the beginners, so thank you very much, Sim. When we spoke before about everything's in a state of motion, yet we hear so much about the need to slow down to the point of stillness. And that's probably a prose-like way of saying that we want to achieve inner peace. And we want to undo some of the behavioral automatic stuff that's happening in the head and in the body. Very often we don't even realize autogenic type of effects in the body. And our next speaker, Dr. Bev Lewis, whom I introduced last week and who reminded me this evening that she and her husband, Dr. Daniel Lewis, and I were part of a spiritual journey that we took to Israel with a group of people and had an absolutely wonderful time. We must do that again, all of us. Is going to now share with us on how to get rid of some of that unwanted stuff that happens in the head and in the body. Thank you, Bev.
So thank you for the introduction again, Label. And welcome to session 2, where we will continue to focus on meditation as a practical anti-stress tool. A tool that can be found within the space of our being. A tool that is highly adaptable and that can be used anywhere with practice to enhance the quality of our lives. Based on the written feedback that I received from you last week, we are ready to move as a group to a quantum level of exploration. At this level, we will be able to hold a dual reality where our reaction to a stimulus can be recognised as a fixed point, and where there will also be movement. And in the space between those two realities will be the space of choice that will be opening us up to us in the course of this series, and which you'll be coming clearer on the space of choice and to how to have that open up. So for the results of last week's baseline meditation session, the simple exercise of counting to 10, as you may recall, 10 breathing cycles in a row at your own natural pace. And of course, the results showed that quite a number of you chose to count on, which was fine. However, the findings are that 88% of people here who categorise themselves as new to meditation were able to do that exercise and comfortably hold their own space of focused attention. 83% of the people who categorise themselves as experienced meditators without a daily practice looking to refresh or create one were able to achieve that, and 92% of experienced meditators with a daily practice. So the overall finding essentially is that I couldn't really differentiate between you. And that's an interesting finding and one that I didn't expect. I thought your prior experience with regard to meditation would facilitate that. However, there are a number of factors that could explain it, but the one that I find most interesting is that in a group of meditators, the ability to focus attention is enhanced for new meditators or experienced meditators alike. And after all, we are in the space of Spiritgrow, which I have no doubt will further enhance our ability to focus our attention. My other conclusion is that most of you found this exercise quite effortless. And this is really where we are headed with meditation techniques that we can call upon quite easily as we evolve and adapt their use to different situations. What I'd like to say to those who didn't find the exercise quite so effortless is that a counting, breathing meditation doesn't appeal to everybody, doesn't suit everybody, and that's why the homework has a choice of exercises. And it's important that for your home assignment, you're choosing an exercise from the ones that I'm recommending that has appealed to you. But I have no doubt for those people who would want to improve their counting, whether they like the exercise or not, a bit more practice will probably see them notice a change in that direction. The other thing to mention is that I know some of you have quite complex breathing and meditation practices already, and of course you can continue with those. However, I am recommending that you do follow one of the simple exercises on a daily basis that I this week will put on an audio for you and guide you through them so that you get the sense of choice that's available. Again, to tune into your own natural rhythm of breathing so that you can create it in a moment or in a few moments or in a few breaths so that you can use it anywhere. And just before we move on to our baseline meditation exercise for this week, on which I'll be asking you for feedback again, I just want to mention that if any of you are wondering about how much can you adapt these simple exercises that we're exploring, that we have recently on our lewisinstitute.com.au released an audio guide that takes you through this process of discovering simple, easily accessible ways, as we're exploring in this room over the next 2 weeks after this one, to take you beyond the scope of what we can do in this room and to gain an understanding that you can apply these exercises and adapt them to not only creating a rebalancing sense of calm, but also to apply them to winding down at night and getting a good night's sleep, to managing anxious responses, to rebalancing the experience of pain and persisting fatigue, and to develop your own meditation practice in line with whatever needs that you have to address. And now we're going to move into our baseline meditation for this week, which is one that I'm going to guide you through. It's one in which is going to be another opportunity for you to connect with the vehicle that is your body and with the steering wheel that is your mind. So when you're ready, and you might want to make some adjustments to your position in your seat, so that you can become more comfortable. So you can begin by bringing your awareness to your feet as they're contacting the floor. Just settling in to your own space, in your own seat. We're a group of meditators, but also you're an individual in your own seat, so make any adjustments at any time to make yourself more comfortable. Become aware of any sounds, the position of your hands, and where they're resting. Become aware of the sensations in your fingertips. Notice any taste in the mouth and any discernible scent in the air. And as you do that, you can notice the gentle expansiveness of the breath in the space of the nostrils or the mouth, if you're mouth breathing, in the space of the chest, and possibly in the abdomen. Bring your attention to wherever you are noticing the natural expansion occurring within you in response to the soft and soothing rhythm of the breathing. And in the space of awareness, you can begin to notice some subtle shifting occurring naturally. And there may be some sense of calm, connection, comfort, quiet, peace. And whatever you are noticing is what you are noticing. So allow whatever is beneficial to you that you are noticing to expand with each breath in the space of your being. And when you are ready, bring yourself back slowly and gently to an awareness of the room. That's bringing yourself back. And then with the experience of what you connected with in this space, I will ask you shortly, as you are bringing yourself back to the room now, to record on a piece of paper, which is under most seats, on a clipboard, in a word or two or three, what your experience during this exercise is for you. And everybody's experience in the room is important to me in terms of the feedback. So please write whatever you experienced in a word or two or three, and please leave the paper under your chair so that we can pick it up at the end of the evening. And now we're ready to move into the next meditation. So in this meditation, we are going to be exploring the use of the soft and gentle outflow of the out-breath as a release, a natural release mechanism. So once again, make any adjustments to your seat and the comfort that you want to create for yourself and that can grow during the space of this, again, quite brief exercise. And I invite you to connect again with your feet. Any sounds, the sensations in your fingertips. And when you want to enhance your inner focus, you can close your eyes at any time. And notice that as you are breathing in, you are breathing in. And as you are breathing out, you are aware of breathing out. And that your breathing is becoming subtly slower and possibly deeper, naturally and effortlessly, without you having to change anything. Notice how the body is slowly and gently now releasing the deoxygenated air that is no longer useful, without you having to think about it. And in the spaciousness of the flow of the out-breath, you can slowly, gently, and naturally be releasing any thoughts without having to think about it. And you can allow any thoughts to simply pass on by, like soft, white, fluffy clouds passing across the horizon. And you can begin to notice the spaciousness between the clouds, between the thoughts, to reveal the clearing blue of the sky. And being in contact with this meditation tool now that resides within the space of your being, you can simply be aware of sitting comfortably where you are, in your chair, from where you can notice that the tool is engraved with exquisite writing that only you can decipher. And when you gaze inwards upon this tool, you can see the words and hear the words. Remember to activate me, to regain your inner balance. And tonight, when you leave this room into the refreshing warm air outside, you will notice that there are some leaves on trays in the foyer. Leaves from 3 beautiful tall trees: the bay tree, the orange tree, and the locust. And you can choose a leaf if you want, take it home with you, place it somewhere in your environment to remind you that you are building the ability to create rebalancing spaces and places in your life where you can bring in the essence of calm and inner balance into your day over the next week. And when you are ready, slowly and gently, bring yourself back into the room. Perfect timing. And I really want to thank you for your focused attention and for your willingness to be exploring what is possible for us as a group and for you as individuals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bev. That was so wonderful. Lauren works in the evenings teaching people how to stretch their body, how to relax, and the like. And I want to thank her personally for taking time after all that to come here and to help this wonderful group of people just with one little pose each time that we present. So Lauren, kindly come and assist us. And on screen you'll also probably have what Lauren does so you can see what she's doing.
Thanks, Label. Good evening, everybody. I'm not sure if all of you were here last week, but my name is Lauren and I'll be taking you for the yoga portion of this course. So each week I'll be presenting one posture that you can all practice at your home. So today we're going to be focusing on a really great posture. It's actually one of my favourite poses, which is legs up the wall. And it's a really wonderful pose, really cooling and calming. So if you're coming home from a stressful day at work, even if you're travelling, really wonderful pose to try. So all you need is a wall. So you can also try this on your bed. Just find a little space in your home. I'm going to be demonstrating over here. So to begin, you'll start by sitting down onto the floor. Hopefully you'll be able to see me in the video up there, I'm not sure. Now you might be able to. Cool. Yeah, so you'll begin by sitting down onto the ground. Are you able to see me okay? Cool. Yeah, so you'll begin, can you all see me all right? Awesome, cool. So you'll begin by sitting onto the ground. You'll take your right hip to the wall and you'll sit as close as you can to the wall, so taking your right hip here. You'll then place your hands out beside you and you'll start to pivot your legs up the wall. So really pivoting the body so that the legs are resting against the wall. And the aim here is to get your buttocks as further close to the wall as you can. Really though, it's okay because sometimes our hamstrings can be a little bit tight, so we might not be able to make it our buttocks totally against the wall. That's completely fine. From here, you'll straighten the legs, really dorsiflex into the feet, so really keeping the toes pointed towards you. There are a couple options with your arms here. You can rest the palms onto the belly lightly and gently. Otherwise, you can allow the hands and the arms to splay out beside you. And then gently closing the eyes here. And this is really a really wonderful pose. It's meant to be quite restorative, something that's going to re-energize the body. So if you're ever feeling a little bit flat, a bit low of energy, just find a place, a space, whether it's in your room, in the study, just finding a wall that you can use. And you might, if you've never done this before, it might feel a little bit strange with your the blood rushing down back to your head, but that's totally normal. And so just remain here, really focusing in on your breath. So noticing as you inhale, the belly expands, and as you exhale, it contracts back down. And then keep remaining in this position for about a minimum of 10 breaths. You can feel free to stay here for as long as feels good for you. And then to release from here, you'll bend the knees and then just gently roll over to your right side and just remaining there for a moment. And taking a breath here. And then just gently place your left hand towards the ground to lift yourself back up. And just remain in a seated position here for a couple of breaths. You might find a little bit dizzy if you haven't been in this inversion-like pose before, but that's totally normal. Just really take it slowly as you do come out of the pose. And another great benefit of this pose is it is said to reverse the effects of aging. So you can all finish the course, free wrinkles, all of that. Yeah, so give it a try, remaining in the pose for about 10 breaths. There will be a video up on the YouTube page, so if you might forget how to sort of get in and get out, so just feel free to have a look at the video if that's helpful for you. And yeah, just give it a try. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Thank you all for joining. And I look forward to having you again as our guests next week. Two very special people I'd like to just initially thank. One is my wife, Leah, for providing the recipe and the content of the drink that you had, and she keeping consulted. And the other one is Menachem's wife, Rachel, who's in the back, who makes sure that Menachem does everything that he does right for us. Thank you very much, and good night.